For today's video, I want to talk about culture shock, which is a term you've probably heard of. Culture shock is basically when a certain lifestyle or way of life doesn't gel with the surrounding people. My attitude on culture shock is quite simple. I think that people, certainly in this country, invite extreme forms of culture shock into their minds via the lens of the internet and movies, the cinema, and all kinds of digital media, social media. It seems to me like it's acceptable to, like I say, invite extreme culture shock through your computer into your mind to be processed by your subconscious mind ultimately, and that's acceptable. I mean, I don't want to talk about any specific horror films, but I'm sure you've seen your fair share of movies that you really shouldn't watch. And then it seems like in society there are quite accepted groups. I don't want to mention any names, but there are all kinds of groups out there which are basically accepted because they've been around for a few decades, with one group being around for a few hundred years. There's something called the Boyd Cult Scale, which is a set of 10 criteria which you score between 1 and 10, which gives you a percentage of how much like a cult actually is. I did this on the Abbey of Thelema and I got a score of 37%. But there are other groups out there which seem to gel with society and conform in a more sort of watertight way. They sort of fit in snugly with society. They would actually score sometimes a much higher Boyd Cult Skull rating. Um, but yeah, culture shock. When we think about culture shock, we have to think about geographical location and historical precedent as well. Um, there's bound to be something somewhere in the world that isn't going to fit in anywhere else. And as far as culture shock's concerned, we have to remember that the Urantia book says quite openly that this planet is a decimal planet or a life experimentation world. So certain things are done here on this planet that you just don't find anywhere else. The Urantia book says that every 10th planet is a decimal or a life experimentation world. So with that in mind, you could say that culture shock is the norm on this planet. Um, but yeah, if people criticize me and the way I behave, I would simply say to them, if you want to watch all these crazy films on the internet, really bizarre stuff. I mean, I made a video a while back about the artificial intelligence videos that I was watching, which are totally off the wall, um, completely and totally bonkers. Artificial intelligence music videos. And if that's acceptable, then maybe following a religion that is 120 years old as of today, um, you know. So yeah, culture shock. And who wants a world or a country or even a town or a city that has no culture shock? What kind of a society would it be if it was totally fixed and congealed and fossilized and calcinated? And there are some countries, I'm not going to mention what countries, but there are some countries like that already which have become calcinated. As far as culture shock's concerned, the United Kingdom is probably one of the most tolerant, multicultural, multi ethnic nations the world has ever known. And people seem to be getting along relatively well. Um, but anyway, there's just a few little ideas bouncing around in my head. I might make another video, a more structured one, on culture shock, and I might even try and document some academic references, some proper quotes from the various social science books that exist. But yeah, just a few thoughts on culture shock. So I'm not going to pull a funny face now. Okay.